Straight away to that breaking news, President Obama has announced that the al-Qaeda leader Osama Bin Laden is dead. He was killed by US troops in Pakistan after a ground operation based on US intelligence.
Osama Bin Laden was behind a number of atrocities, including the attacks on New York and Washington in September the 11th, 2001. Both the US and UK have put their embassies around the world on alert, warning of the possibility of al-Qaeda reprisal attacks. Andrew North reports from Washington.
Tonight, I can report to the American people and to the world that the United States has conducted an operation that killed Osama bin Laden, the leader of al-Qaeda.
It's 10 years since Osama bin Laden attacked the United States on its own shores. 3,000 people were killed on 9/11, the worst attack on American soil since Pearl Harbor. When bin Laden admitted he'd ordered them, he became the world's most wanted man.
There's an old poster out west, as I recall, that said, "Wanted, dead or alive."
He was tracked down to the mountains of Tora Bora after US forces had invaded Afghanistan. B-52s bombed the warren of caves he used to hide out. But he escaped over the border into Pakistan's tribal areas, and the trail went cold. This weekend, US Special Forces found him, not in the tribal areas, but in the Pakistani town of Abbottabad. He was sheltering in this compound, filmed here after the US raid, just down the road from a Pakistani military base.
It's an odd feeling in the ballpark right now, to be perfectly honest with you at home. Some of the crowd chanting USA, USA.
The news started spreading across the US even before President Obama spoke. Crowds flocked to Times Square in New York, soldiers joining the celebrations.
God bless America.
Outside the White House, there were chants of 4 more years for Obama. The crowds here outside the White House are growing all the time. There's a mood of huge euphoria and relief at what they've just heard from President Obama. For me, it also brings back memories of being in the US immediately after September the 11th, when it was fear that brought people together. And even now, despite the celebration, there's fear that this is not the end of the story. Its training camps in Afghanistan may be destroyed, but al-Qaeda has mushroomed elsewhere. Its number 2, Ayman al-Zawahiri, is still at large. But right now, America is celebrating news many thought would never come, that Osama bin Laden is dead. Andrew North, BBC News, Washington.
Well, let's head straight to New York, to Ground Zero, and Barbara Plett, our correspondent there. And Barbara, tell us a little more about what is happening where you are.
Well, at the moment, I'd say there's about 100 people here, down from earlier crowds, which reached about 1,000 initially when people spontaneously came out to the site here on hearing the news. I'd say there's 2 moods. On the one hand, there's a real party, patriotic atmosphere with, you might be able to hear the chants, USA, USA, men sort of toasting each other with their beer and singing God Bless America and leaping up and down. And on the other hand, there is a sort of contemplative mood. Some people sitting on the pavement with candles lit, quietly being reflective about what 9/11 meant for them. So you get both moods here, and they erupt from time to time.
And of course, these were attacks that had changed the psyche of America, let alone the rest of the world, of enormous significance, the events of the last 24 hours.
Yes, and you get that reflected in some of the comments here. One man said to me, "I'm really glad it was the Americans who nailed him," that's how he put it, who got him. "I'm glad it was us who did it. I wish that they could kill him 1,000 times. Unfortunately, they can only kill him once." So that sense of the Americans having got their own back in a certain way, and of getting a sort of justice, the kind that President Obama was talking about. Although when I ask people, do they feel there's a sense of closure now to 9/11, and most of them say no, they don't think so. They think that the situation will continue in a dangerous way, that there may be retaliation attacks. They are, of course, embroiled in 2 different wars. But for them, at the moment, this is good news, one man said to me, and after a long period when there's only been bad news.
OK, Barbara Plett there at Ground Zero. Thanks very much. Thank you.
Well, in an official statement, Pakistan has described the killing of Osama Bin Laden as a major setback to terrorist organisations around the world. But it will be embarrassing to the Pakistani authorities that Bin Laden had apparently been living in Pakistan for some time. Well, I'm joined from Islamabad by our correspondent, Haroon Rashid. So, Haroon, in the affluent town of Abbottabad, rather than a cave complex in the tribal areas.
Yeah, completely surprising. Everyone was taken by surprise that he was found in Abbottabad, one of the major military garrisons in Pakistan, and which houses one of the Pakistan's biggest and premier military training academy. And some witnesses told us that the operation, the house where he was living, was just 1,000 yards from that academy. So all in all, quite a surprising thing that it happened. But keeping in mind the past history, we have seen that Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, one of the top leaders and mastermind believed to be behind the 9/11, was arrested from Rawalpindi, which is like 20 kilometers from Islamabad. And another senior Taliban leader, Mullah Baradar, was arrested from Karachi in January this year. So, I mean, I think these are the places where these people like to hide, where they are most unlikely to be found. So I think that was the policy behind staying in these places.
And the compound where he was found seems so much larger than the surrounding buildings and pretty well fortified.
Yeah, of course. I mean, witnesses tell us that the house was encircled by a high wall, which was like 14 feet high. And also they had barbed wires around it, which is not unusual in Pakistan. In some areas, you will find bigger, spacious houses of quite influential and wealthy people who like to have big compounds. But the area that we saw where this operation took place is more like a village, and in there, this house was a completely low-profile sort of a place where he wanted to stay, I believe.
Haroon, for the moment, thank you very much. Haroon Rashid in Islamabad.
Let's go straight back to Washington and speak to our Washington correspondent, Adam Brooks. And Adam, what details are emerging of this operation?
Well, reporters in Washington have been briefed overnight by senior administration officials. They've given us a picture of what happened, and it goes briefly something like this. 4 years ago, US intelligence started paying attention to a few people that it felt were close to Osama bin Laden. One man in particular that they thought was a courier for him, carrying messages. 2 years ago, we're told, this man was identified, and he led US intelligence to a compound that he was using in Abbottabad. This compound, once the US intelligence analysts started looking at it through satellite photographs and the other means and tricks of their trade, decided that this was the sort of place that you might try to hide. High walls, very private, barbed wire, no phone or internet access from it, strangely, even though it looked like the compound of a wealthy person. By late last year, President Obama was being briefed on this intelligence. By February and March this year, the president was chairing meetings, sifting through the intelligence, trying to decide whether or not the US should go and hit this compound. It was all kept very closely guarded. We're told the Pakistanis were not informed. And just at the end of last week, the president decided that the raid should go ahead. 4 helicopters, US Special Forces troops on the ground, we're told, for less than 40 minutes. A firefight, Osama bin Laden was killed. So were 3 other men, including his couriers, and a woman who was used as a human shield. And we're now told, it's being widely reported here, that Osama bin Laden's body has already been disposed of at sea.
And Adam, an enormous boost for the president himself. We heard him make that statement, but he's been under pressure almost since he actually took office in terms of the whole strategy on terror.
It's been a nagging feature of both the Bush presidency and the Obama presidency, that this sense of unfinished business, this lack of completion, this nagging sense that Osama bin Laden had evaded the best efforts of the world's superpowers to find him. Well, President Obama was able to announce tonight that he has closed that particular chapter. And that will be an enormous boost to him. It gives him great credibility. It makes him look like the president that appointed the right people and maintained the correct degree of momentum in the intelligence community and in the military in order to find and kill Osama bin Laden. But the administration is warning tonight, as we've been hearing from all over the place already, this story isn't over. Al-Qaeda is not finished. Just because its figurehead is dead, it does not mean that the movement itself is dead. And the movement itself may now feel tempted to lash out. We're being warned by the Obama administration tonight, and Americans are being warned to be very, very careful around the world about where they go and what they do.
Yes, and that's a message that's been reflected here from the Foreign Secretary and others, just the warning about possible reprisal attacks.
Yes, and I think a broader sense that big changes like this bring uncertainty. I think it's very hard to predict how the Al-Qaeda movement and its various franchises, as they're referred to around the world, are going to behave. Are they going to be demoralised, or are they going to be newly invigorated by this? Will a new leader try and take control of Al-Qaeda? Will they feel that they need to prove themselves by launching some sort of dramatic operation? All these questions remain open, and these are the sort of questions that US intelligence analysts in this city will be turning their minds to tonight and tomorrow and in the weeks to come.
OK, Adam, for now, thanks very much. Adam Brooks there in Washington.